Within this episode, I'm going to review 8 super cool Nuget packages that will help you to improve your code base and your productivity. And the best news is this is a 2023 list, so it all works with .NET 7. Now, if I'm honest, I didn't want to create another video which just contained another collection of the most downloaded packages in .NET. Instead, I thought I'd showcase some of the packages found on the less traveled route. This is why within this video, you're not going to find any mention of Serialog, Mock, XUnit, JSON.NET, and all the other popular ones. Now, even though some of the hidden gems that I'm going to cover in this list have been downloaded millions of times a piece, I'm still pretty confident that there's going to be a few packages here that you're not heard about, which will also make your day-to-day life way easier. Now, quickly, before you learn about these 8 hidden gems, I would ask you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Now, if this is the first time seeing one of my videos, then my name is John, and I release a video every single Sunday that help developers become coding legends. So if you're into web development, C#, JavaScript, Jamstack, then click on subscribe because I guarantee that you'll learn something. Now, with that done, let's have a look at this first hidden gem. Now, the first hidden gem that we're going to look at is called NodaTime. NodaTime was developed by the legendary Stack Overflow answering machine John Skeet. Now, NodaTime has been downloaded over 85 million times, so I'm not quite sure you can classify it as a hidden gem anymore. However, when you need to work with time, it is a powerful tool nonetheless. Now, NodaTime was developed to address certain limitations found within the standard date time. Now, the improvements you can find with NodaTime include improved time zone support. So NodaTime provides a more robust and flexible way to handle time zones. This is especially important when you need to repeatedly convert dates and times across different time zones. Immutable. NodaTime dates can be made immutable. This makes it easier to write unit tests for timestamps created with NodaTime. Better precision. NodaTime provides more granular precision compared to datetime, which can be important for creating certain applications. Improved readability. A lot of developers' feedback has been that NodaTime syntax and naming conventions are more intuitive and easier to read compared to datetime. More accuracy with ambitious and invalid times, such as during daylight saving transitions. Before we start deep diving into this package, it's worth pointing out that all the code you're about to see in this video is available for you to download from this repo, which is called Nuget Gems for .NET 7. So you can access this from my GitHub, which is johnDjones-poc. You can install a NodaTime via Nuget. So within your Solution Explorer, you can access it doing the Manage Nuget Package for Solution. From here, if we do a search, and you should be able to find NodaTime created by John Skeet. Before getting into the code, I should point out that NodaTime is a fairly in-depth package, and because we're covering 8 other packages in this video, I haven't got time to go through everything in detail and explain all the theory. So instead, what I'm going to do is just whiz through so you can understand where you get more granular permissions when it comes to working with dates compared to standard date time. Hopefully that makes sense. So in order to get started with NodaTime, import the NodaTime namespace. Now, when it comes to working with NodaTime, you're going to get access to a few new types. So you can see we have the instant object, we have this thing called a local datetime, we have something called a zoned datetime. Basically, in essence, you're going to have much more control over defining something like a point in time using something like the system clock. We can then create local dates. So using patterns like the create with invariant culture or the pass pattern, we can define and create NodaTime friendly dates. Now, if we want to associate a date time, say to a different time zone, we can then use something like the date time zone provider. In here, you can see that I'm using the time zone database to convert this time or set it to a European London date time. Now, yes, granted, all this code might look a bit confusing at first. However, the main takeaway I want you to get is that when you need to work with dates or times, NodaTime is going to give you way more capabilities compared to using that vanilla default date time provided by good old Microsoft. OneOf is a handy package to bust out whenever you need to return multiple different types from the same method or expression, say like a switch statement. Now, downloaded over 8.4 million times, OneOf gives you F#-like capabilities in C#. Now, I have to put my hands up. I've never really looked at F# in anger. I don't really know what the differences are, and I took the statement from the package's blurb. However, whenever I've needed to return different types and pick one of those types within the same method, I install OneOf. To install OneOf, head over to Nuget, and the package you want to install is OneOf by Harry McIntyre. Getting started with OneOf is dead simple. All we need to do is import the OneOf namespace. This is going to give you access to the OneOf struct. Now, this struct uses generics. This means that you can pass in as many different types as you want when you're declaring it. Now, the benefit of using OneOf over, say, like a tuple in C#7 is that in OneOf, you only need to return a single type. And you can see this in play on line 10, where I'm returning a string, and on line 13, where I'm returning a completely different type of an object. And as you'll hopefully understand, in normal C#, this would be throwing an error. It would not like this. Now, the benefit of using OneOf is that in the calling code, you're also going to have a lot more control over how you parse those returned arguments. So first, you can see that I'm calling that method here. It's returning that OneOf struct, where T0 is of type my object and T1 is of type string. Now, first off, we have a match, and this is probably the most common way you're going to use OneOf. So in the first type T0, you can see that we've got access to the my object. In the T1, it's a string, and we've got access to that string. Now, aside from match, we can also do is T0 or is T1. This is going to turn a bool to make sure it actually has a value. We can also do an as, so we can do an as T0, otherwise let's throw an argument exception. Finally, we can also do something like a switch on the data. So instead of actually returning results, we can call a method or do something else. So as you can hopefully see, using OneOf gives you a lot more power than simply defining a load of interfaces and maybe returning something using a design pattern, or just returning multiple types using a tuple. Have you ever needed to parse some text that's been formatted using something like camel case, kebab case, or even the classic snake case? Now, whenever you need to convert text into a format that normal people can actually read, instead of trying to create some elaborate string replacement method yourself, instead you can turn to Humanizer to save the day. Now, using Humanizer's extension methods, Humanizer allows you to turn an otherwise computerized string into a more readable, human-friendly one. To install Humanizer, again, head over to Nuget and you want to find Humanizer. Now, I'm not going to try and butcher Mehdi and Claire's surnames, but it's this package that you want to download. To get going with Humanize, all we need to do is import the namespace into our class, and then we'll get access to an extension method. Now, for the example I'm going to show you in this video, you can see I've got an example of some camel case without any spaces, kebab case with my dash, snake case with my underscore, and some shouty case. Now, in order to convert any of this text into something different, we can use the Humanize extension method here. Now, on top of this, if you want to do additional kind of conversions, we can do this apply case. And from here, you can see that we can pass in this letter casing. So we can do things like all caps, lowercase, sentence case, title case. So you have a good number of ways of how you actually want to humanize your text. So now let's see how the Humanize method converts our text. So with our camel case, you can see that we've now got some spaces. With our kebab case, you can see that we've got rid of our dashes for spaces. With our snake case, you can see that we've got rid of our little underscores. And with our shouty case, you can see that we've now got nicely formatted text. Now, there is a thing to note. We can see that we've still got all the capitals, so the sentence case is respected. But as you can see, if you need to quickly convert things, this is very quick, easy and powerful. The next package is going to be extremely useful for people who are fans of the guard pattern. Now, I've been evangelizing the guard pattern for many years now over on my website. And the next package is called GuardClauses. And this package is really handy because it's going to save you reinventing the wheel every single time you want to apply the guard pattern onto any new project you start. Now, GuardClauses is definitely not the only guard package available on Nuget. We also have things like ensure that. We also have Dawn Guard. However, my personal favourite is GuardClauses. With over 8.1 million downloads, many other developers seem to agree with me as well. To get going with GuardClauses, we can install the package via Nuget. So basically, fire up your Nuget Explorer if you don't want to use the command line, and from here you need to find this Ardalis GuardClauses by Steve Smith. Install this and then you're good to go. After you have installed GuardClauses, you'll then get access to a handy utility function which you can then use to validate and guard against incoming arguments for invalid data. So in my little example, you can see that I'm passing in an object, and this object has a few properties. So in order to get going with GuardClauses, we use this static guard identifier, and then we just do guard.against to get the method. And remember, you're going to need to import the using Ardalis GuardClauses. Now, some of the methods we have are null, and we can pass in any type of object into here. If we have strings, we can do null or empty, or null or white space. If you've got a number, we can do out of range. So in here, I'm passing in this ID, which is of type int, and then I'm passing in the lower and the upper range to guard against. Now, in this example, I've got a date time, which I can pass into the out of SQL date range. Then again, if I've got numbers, I can do a guard against 0 or a guard against negative numbers being passed in. So all in all, I think we can agree this package will save you reinventing the wheel each time. It gives you a good amount of capabilities and functionality, so give it a try. Demystifier will basically help you to make the debugging process simpler. So after installing Demystifier, whenever an exception is thrown anywhere in your codebase, you can basically configure your code so that the stack trace will include the output based on the compiler transformed methods rather than the source code compiled methods. In essence, this package will provide you with more useful information within the logs. This means that when things do go wrong, you should be able to actually more easily understand the reason why things have broken and where in the code base things have actually broken. This will basically save you a bunch of time. To install Demystifier, head over to Nuget again, and the package you want to install is Ben.Demystifier by Ben Adams. To get going with Demystified, we'll need to reference system.diagnostics within your using. Now, after doing this, you're going to get access to two new extension methods. Now, the first one is using generics, and it's called Demystify. So as the T, you can pass in the exception that you want to work with, and then it's going to render out your stack trace. Alternatively, we can do a two-string demystified. Now, as you'll see from this code, using the new package, the syntax looks exactly the same as using the traditional .NET stuff, which I've created below. Now, one thing that really bugs me with the standard .NET stack trace is shown on the screen right now. Now, when you pass something like an enumerable into a method, the stack trace won't tell you the exact type that you're working with. Now, by default, an underlining iterator is not directly listed within the stack trace log. So let's have a look at what the exception is going to look like. So basically, I've created this little API project, and this is rendering out what an original classic stack trace will look like. Now from here, you can see that we've got this list -1 list, which isn't very useful whatsoever. Now, if I then change this to true, this is then going to demystify our exception. And from here, you can see straight away, this call stack is much easier to read because we've actually got the type of object now rather than that list-list. And this is basically how Demystifier is going to help you write code, because when you start looking in your logs, you're going to have much easier code to read because you can actually see what you see within Visual Studio rather than what the compiler sees. This is the reason why I recommend everyone should install this package on every single one of their projects, because it's just going to make your life that much easier. Downloaded over 50 million times, Flurl is an HTTP client that can be used to replace the vanilla HTTP client class. Now, one of the standout things about Flurl, besides that I can't say it, is that it's easier to write unit tests with it. Now, granted, there are a few other clients on the marketplace that do similar things. So these packages include REST and Refit. However, I personally prefer Flurl. Now, Flurl allows you to consume services by building a fluent chain of instructions. To install Flurl, head over to Nuget and you want to install the package called Flurl by Ben.Demystifier. To get going with Flurl, there's basically two different techniques that you can use. Now, if you prefer, you could create a using, then create a new Flurl client, passing in your API URL. Now, once you have a client, you can then start chaining up different commands using the Fluent API. So, in this example, we're calling the Chuck Norris API and making a specific call to the random joke endpoint. Then I'm guessing the results, doing a JSON async, and I'm actually typing this to a custom object that I've created called joke. Now, alternatively, if you want a simpler technique, you can also just do something like an await, pass in your API URL, and then you can again start chaining different commands. So in this example, I'm using the append path segment, which is doing a jokes.random. Now, when it comes to configuring the request, we can also have access to this configure request method right here. Passing in a settings object, you can see I can do things like settings after call async. Otherwise, we can do things like timeout on error, what we can do with a JSON serializer. We've got before call, we've got on error, on redirects. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do. Now, the nice thing about using Flurl is it's going to be much easier for you to create unit tests. So in this very basic example below, you can see that I've created a new test. Now, using the Flurl HTTP test object here, as you can see past of Flurl testing, we then have access to do a HTTP test, responds with an OK, should have called this endpoint with verb with content type. Downloaded over 39,000 times, FusionCache is a caching package that's arguably better than the more popular lazy cache. Now, when you need a quick and easy way to start caching your C# objects, you should consider using FusionCache. Now, some reasons why you might use FusionCache over other caching packages include it supports Redis, MongoDB, and CosmoDB. Caching at Stampede prevents multiple concurrent factory calls. Backplane support to notify other nodes about changes in the cache. A fail-safe mode when a factory or a distributed cache call fails, hard and soft timeouts, plugin support, and logging. To install FusionCache, head over to Nuget, and the package you want to install is the one by Ziggy Creatures, FusionCache by Jody Donetti. After you've installed the package, you can get going by importing the ziggycreatures.caching.fusion namespace. Then, to create a cache, we need to create up a new FusionCache object, and then from here it's also possible to type in different caching options. So in here we've got things like sliding exploration, different distributed caches. I won't cover it in this video. Now, creating a basic cache is very simple. First, we can simply use the try get in order to try and get something out of the cache, passing in a cache key. We can then check with the has value, and we can use the value in order to get the data back. Now, if we haven't got anything in the cache in this example, you can see that we can then add in something to the cache using a get or set. From here, I'm creating an object, passing in my key, storing that object, giving it a time span, off we go. So if you need to implement a quick and simple cache within your code, you can see that within 15 lines, you can have a very easy, nice cache set up, working in production. Voila. The last hidden gem that we're going to be covering within this video is called benchmark.net. Now, benchmark.net is great to pull out when you want to do some quick and simple benchmarking of your code. So in essence, if you need to performance test a class or a method, instead of having to use an external tool, go through a load of faff, use benchmark.net, you can basically use some attributes, get some benchmarking up and running, usually within a few minutes, which is pretty amazing. To install benchmark.net, head over to Nuget again and look for benchmark.net by the .NET Foundation and contributors. You can install NodaTime via Nuget. So within your Solution Explorer, you can access it doing the Manage Nuget Package for Solution. From here, if we do a search, and you should be able to find NodaTime created by John Skeet. Getting started with benchmark.net is pretty simple. First, we just need to import an attribute. So benchmark.net attributes. And then any method that you want to test or benchmark, we just decorate it like this. Now, one of the caveats is that you can't actually directly do a benchmark within a web project. So in my example, I've created a web API. However, I can't run a benchmark directly within my API project. And it's for this reason I've created my console app right here. So within my console app, you can see that I've also imported the benchmark.net NuGet package. Now from here, in order to benchmark something, I can do this benchmark runner.run, and then I can use the class that I want to benchmark. In order to generate my benchmark report, all I need to do is simply run my console application. Now the one caveat over this is that you need to make sure that it's in release mode, otherwise nothing's going to work. After we do this, as you can see, the report is going to generate within a terminal. When you run the console app, benchmark.net will benchmark your code 100 times, and then it will output the results within a terminal window. The report in essence is going to give you a breakdown of how your code performed, so you can know if your performance related tweaks have been successful or not. Now, there's definitely a lot more to this package than I have time to cover in the remainder of this video. However, as I'm hoping it comes across, implementing this package can be done extremely quickly, and the finished report can give you invaluable insights into your code's performance. So this concludes my hidden gems list. Do you agree with my list? Do you think I've missed anything out? Let me know in the comments below which one's your favourite, or which ones you think I should potentially review in the future. Now, it's got to that stage of the video. If you haven't already, don't forget to hit subscribe so you can see my new video on Sunday, and it really does help me out if you leave a comment, because it helps me carry on creating content. Now, if you're interested to learn more about Visual Studio, then I've created a video which is called "What is the best ChatGPT extension for Visual Studio 2022?" and you can find that link on the screen right now. So click on that if you're interested. It's a banger. Otherwise, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are in this beautiful world. And until next Sunday, happy coding.